A viewer has asked why, given the small risk reductions provided by statins, that they're still pushed by our doctors. Let's look at that. Stay tuned. So here's the question that was posed by Tallgrass9366. With nearly 100 million Americans on statins, why do cardio doctors continue to push statins over the last 25 plus years as the only item in their tool bag, when the science says the absolute risk reduction is only less than 1% up to 3% for major cardio events? What your actual absolute risk reduction will be will depend on your absolute risk, but these numbers are pretty close to what it actually is. So this is what we're going to look at. Now I'm going to give reasons why I think this is the case, but some of these are speculative. Reason number one, they wish to avoid liability. Here is from a website from a firm that works with malpractice suits. This is a law firm. And they say here, when you are a doctor, one part of preventing heart disease in your patients is paying attention to the warning signs. This is a law firm actually advising doctors. One common condition that can ultimately cause heart disease is high cholesterol. Notice they state that as a fact. And then cardiology malpractice suits will sometimes stem from the fact that a physician failed to diagnose the high cholesterol. That's very rare. Or they diagnosed it but failed to treat it properly. So this is where the doctor could get into a little trouble. But you notice that regardless of whether the doctor agrees with the premise, any trial is practically guaranteed to accept it as true. The jury will probably accept this as true. That is that high cholesterol actually causes heart disease. One thing I want to point out here is that standard of care is really a legal term. Our doctors follow treatment guidelines, and we'll get to that in a moment. Well, the doctor can only control whether he or she prescribes. So prescribing is legally safer because if you look at this, they can't control whether you have a heart attack or not, at least not completely, but they can control whether they prescribe a statin. If you don't prescribe a statin, there is no advantage to the doctor as far as protection from legal liability. If the patient doesn't have a heart attack, well then that's kind of a break even, but if the patient does have a heart attack, if he survives, or the family can actually bring a malpractice suit against the doctor if they didn't prescribe statins. On the other hand, if they prescribe statins and there's no heart attack, no liability. And if there is a heart attack, the doctor can still argue that they followed the best guidelines available in order to help the patient, and that sometimes these things happen. So what that means is the legal system is indirectly, at least, dictating whether you're prescribed statins or not. Reason number two may be that the doctor really believes in the guidelines. Now let's look at these guidelines. This is an alphabet soup of professional organizations, and any doctor would be hard-pressed to not defer to them. Many of these organizations are in the pocket of big pharma and food companies. I don't want to call any one of them out, but you can look through this list and you probably have your own ideas. One of the things on this guideline is they left out by using statins off the end of the title. It should say 2018 guideline on the management of blood cholesterol by using statins. 9 of the 10 recommendations contain the word statin. The lifestyle recommendations really just gets put aside. It's kind of the introductory motherhood one. Oh yeah, we'll talk about lifestyle, but our next 9 recommendations all involve statins to one degree or another. As you can see as we scroll through it, I've highlighted in blue every reference to statins of some kind. The yellow highlighting actually says ignore the risk, just prescribe the statin. And I've highlighted where the 7.5% risk in red is used as a threshold of some kind to say that's too much to bear. And again, keep in mind, I've said this in many videos, that is an opinion, not a scientific fact. Reason number 3 is that some doctors don't understand the statistics. Here's the famous Lipitor ad, where even if an extrapolation to their population is valid, only gives relative risk. Doctors are not always well versed in statistics. A doctor who has a patient who has a 10% risk may very well believe, well, it's going to reduce it by 36%. That means it's going to wipe it out completely. And that's simply not the case. Now let's also look at this chart from that Korean study of 12 million people. This is the age group of 65 to 74, and it shows that a total cholesterol of 160, that's 4.1 millimoles per liter for people who are in the UK and other parts of the world. That's as high a risk as a 300 milligrams per deciliter reading or 7.8 millimoles per liter in the 65 to 74 age group. The claim has been made, I've seen it in an occasional comment also, that this whole decreased mortality, and this is overall mortality I believe, it's because there's a lot of old people who are getting sick that happens to be illnesses that reduces their cholesterol cholesterol, or they're trying to reduce their cholesterol, but it's too late. I think that's special pleading nonsense. It's easily refuted by just looking at the other age groups. So here is the breakdown by age, and except in the youngest, that's men under 34 or women under 44, around 220 milligrams per deciliter or 5.7 millimoles per liter is optimal, and mortality increase is steeper on the low side than on the high side. So this idea that, oh, this doesn't mean anything is easily refuted by looking at all the age groups. In the younger people, it is apparent that maybe lower cholesterol indicates less risk. In all the populations in which statins are likely to be prescribed, you're actually better off from a risk point of view being a little bit higher than the optimal point than being lower. Reason number 4 is that doctors are incentivized to prescribe statins. Here's a report from Healthline.com, which is reviewing a Harvard study that shows that doctors taking industry payouts are more likely to prescribe the brand name statins as opposed to generics. But that's only a subset of what I really want to talk about. The bigger problem is that the US Medicare system, as an example, incentivizes prescribing statins. Now, I had a separate video on this where I go into it in much more depth. They incentivize it by giving extra points, quality points, which ultimately results in higher payments, bonus payments to organizations that prescribe statins at certain rates. They don't look at the results. They don't look at, did this actually decrease heart disease, or did it actually even decrease cholesterol? They don't even measure that. And you'll see in their 5-star quality rating system that there are 6 categories here that have to do with medications. Half of those call out statins specifically. Half of the bonus payments that an organization can get comes simply from prescribing statins. Reason number 5 is that the treatments you're being offered are population-based. I've heard doctors, even one who is generally statin hesitant, he calls himself a statin skeptic because he himself is statin intolerant, says it's a no-brainer to put everyone on a statin if they can tolerate it, because of the people perceived to be saved. So in this group, we have a woman who's excited about having avoided a heart attack. A couple people said, well, I still had a heart attack, and the rest saying, well, I wasn't going to have a heart attack. There's a problem with this analogy, and that is only the people who still had cardiovascular events really have any knowledge, any concrete knowledge, and in their case the statins didn't help. None of the others know anything for sure. This woman really couldn't say, well, I was the one who avoided the heart attack. If most are convinced the lack of a cardiovascular event was because of the statins, it's all the better for the prescribing doctor. For example, if a doctor has 1,000 patients who are eligible for statins, 20 of them on average will know that the statins actually didn't help because they're going to have a cardiovascular event. 980 of them will think that, wow, the statins did help me. I didn't have a heart attack. When statistically, only 11 out of those 980 people actually were helped. The other 969 people took the statin for no reason. Now, there is the problem that we can't identify who's who in this. Only in retrospect we can know the people who weren't helped. This is where the doctor, looking at his patient base as a population, that would encourage them to prescribe statins. Reason number 6, doctors just don't have the time. They're really overloaded. Do they have the time to read anything other than headlines? Well, let's take a look at this report. The ideal average patient load for a primary care provider has been estimated to be at 1,000. The number is closer to 3,000 in reality. Another study that's cited here came out with the best number to be 983 patients. So, okay, 1,000 patients. That's remarkable. I couldn't keep track of 1,000. I don't have 1,000 friends. They are so busy. Even with 1,000 patients, they could only spend 2 hours a year on any particular person. With 3,000 patients, it's going to be about 45 minutes a year in the presence of the patient. Are you going to get any quality care in this situation? So if they can only read the headlines, well, what about a headline like this? I actually spoke with a medical professional. I wasn't their patient, it's just somebody I know, and I mentioned the study that this headline refers to, and they immediately snapped back, that study was flawed. And then when I probed, I found that his response was based solely on the headline, not on having read either the accompanying article or the original study, which incidentally was published in the British Medical Journal. Was it flawed? Maybe it was, but it's the British Heart Foundation versus the British Medical Journal, and if all we have time to do is read the headlines, it's a he said, she said situation. And how many of them have quoted the headline from the Samson trial that said 90% of statin adverse effects are nocebo effect, when that study not only had serious limitations, which the authors admitted, but it had serious flaws in the statistical interpretation of what they found. So here are my closing thoughts on this. No individual doctor is prescribing statins for all 6 of these reasons, though 1 or 2 probably apply to many statin-pushing doctors even if they don't realize it. It's now more important than ever to be well-informed. Our doctors simply don't have time to do a nuanced investigation of our condition. We have the advantage of almost 9,000 hours a year in our bodies while they look at it from the outside for perhaps an hour or 2 a year. But remember, they're in the priesthood and we aren't, so when we say we've done our own research, we're more likely to get a roll of the eyes than a respectful hearing. So all I can say is if you have decided through careful thought and study that statins aren't for you, stay strong. So that's all I've got on this subject. If you appreciate this content, please like, share, and comment on this or other topics you'd like me to cover. Now, if you haven't seen this video, I recommend you take a look at it now. Thanks for listening.